Have you ever imagined standing before a vast sea and watching it open right in front of you? The wind roaring, the water trembling, and suddenly a path appearing through the deep? This isn't just one of the most powerful scenes in the Bible. It's also one of the most mysterious and symbolic events in all of human history. Today, you're going to discover what really happened when Moses parted the Red Sea, and what this story reveals about faith, fear, and the power of God to open the impossible. The people of Israel had just escaped slavery in Egypt. After 4 centuries of suffering, humiliation, and tears, they were finally free. But freedom always comes with challenges. Pharaoh, consumed by pride and anger, regretted letting them go. He gathered his mightiest warriors, hundreds of chariots, and set off into the desert, determined to bring them back or destroy them. The Israelites marched under the burning sun until they reached the shores of the Red Sea. There, the realization hit there was nowhere to run. In front of them stretched an endless ocean. Behind them, dust clouds rose from Pharaoh's army. Their children, men shouted in despair, "Why did you bring us here, Moses? Were there no graves in Egypt?" Fear filled the air. But while everyone cried, Moses stood still. His faith didn't shake. He looked to heaven and said, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." And then something incredible began to happen. The pillar of cloud that had guided them by day moved behind the camp, becoming a barrier between Israel and Egypt. One side was covered in darkness, the other was filled with light. The Egyptians couldn't see them anymore. In that holy silence, God spoke to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea." Moses obeyed. He lifted his staff toward the waves. A powerful east wind began to blow through the night, an otherworldly storm that lasted for hours. The waves started to rise, shaking and twisting, until they stood like 2 mighty walls of water. A path opened through the Red Sea. Imagine the sound. The thunder of the wind, the roaring of the sea, and the whispers of awe as the people stepped forward. One by one, the Israelites entered the path. Families walked hand in hand, carrying what little they had. Children looked up in wonder at the glowing walls of water. Every step was an act of faith. They were walking through a miracle. And through that long night, the waters held firm, protecting them until the last person had crossed. But Pharaoh's pride was stronger than fear. He ordered his soldiers to follow. The Egyptian army rushed into the sea path, their chariots clattering, their wheels sinking into the muddy ground. Spoke again to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea." Moses lifted his staff once more, and suddenly the sea returned to its place. The walls of water collapsed with a roar that echoed through the desert. The army that had enslaved Israel was gone, swallowed by the very sea they had mocked. The waters calmed and silence fell again. Holy, eternal silence. When the people saw the bodies of their enemies washed up on the shore, they realized something. It wasn't just a victory of escape. It was the birth of a nation. On that shore, Moses and his sister Miriam lifted their voices and sang, "The Lord is my strength," and his sister Miriam lifted their voices and sang, "The Lord is my strength and my song. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea." That song was the first hymn of freedom in the history of Israel. Many believed the miracle was simply the parting of the waters, but the true miracle was faith itself. Faith that stood firm when fear screamed louder. God could have chosen any other way to save them, but he chose the impossible to show that faith begins where human strength ends. The Red Sea became a symbol of life itself. When we stand between what terrifies us and what we cannot change, God can still make a way. In Hebrew, the Red Sea is called Yam Suf, which means Sea of Reeds. Some historians argue it might have been a shallow marshland. But the Bible describes something far beyond nature. The waters stood like walls. No science or wind alone could ever do that. The power came from the one who commands creation itself. The story of Moses and the Red Sea is not just about escape. It's about trust. While thousands complained, one man believed. And when Moses lifted his hand, God showed the world that nothing can stand against faith. Maybe today you're facing your own sea, a problem, a fear, or a situation that seems impossible to cross. But remember this, the same God who opened the Red Sea still opens paths where there seem to be none. If this story moved your heart, write in the comments, "God still parts the sea." And if you love discovering the mysteries and wonders of the Bible, don't forget to subscribe. Because every week we uncover more ancient truths that remind us that God is still working miracles today. When the sea finally closed behind them, Silence filled the air. The people of Israel stood on the opposite shore, staring at the horizon that had once been their prison. The Red Sea, now calm again, carried no trace of Pharaoh's army. The chains were gone, the fear was gone. For the first time in 4 centuries, the people were truly free. But freedom, as they would soon learn, is not the end of the journey. It's only the beginning. Moses led them into the wilderness of Shur, a vast, endless land of sand and rock. The sun burned during the day and the nights were cold and quiet. They walked for days without water. The joy of victory began to fade, replaced by the same old fear. Will we die here? When they finally found water in a place called Marah, the people ran to drink. But the water was bitter, undrinkable. Anger rose once again. "What are we supposed to drink, Moses?" they cried. Moses prayed, and God showed him a piece of wood. When he threw it into the water, it became sweet. The people drank, and once more they saw that God was with them. A few days later, hunger came. There was no food, no crops, no bread. The people began to complain again. "Why did you bring us out here to die? At least in Egypt we had meat and bread." Their words echoed in the desert. The same hearts that had seen the sea open now doubted again. But God is patient. He told Moses, "I will rain bread from heaven for you." And the next morning the people awoke to find the ground covered with something white, thin and delicate. It looked like frost. Moses said, "This is the bread that the Lord has given you." They called it manna, which means, "What is it?" Every morning for 40 years God fed his people in the desert. Even then they complained. When they grew tired of manna, God sent quails in the evening so they would have meat. When they had no water again, he made it flow from a rock. Every miracle reminded them of one truth: God provides. But faith is not built in one night, it grows through trials. As they journeyed through the desert, a new challenge appeared. The Amalekites, a fierce desert tribe, attacked them without warning. For the first time, Israel had to fight. Moses told Joshua to lead the warriors while he went to the top of a hill to pray. As long as Moses held up his staff, Israel prevailed. But when he grew tired and lowered his hands, the enemy gained strength. So Aaron and Hur stood beside him, one on each side, holding up his arms until sunset. That day, Israel won its first battle. It was a lesson written in dust and sweat. Victory doesn't come from swords or strength, and it comes from faith and unity. Time passed, and the people reached Mount Sinai, the place where heaven would meet earth. Thunder rolled across the mountains, lightning flashed, and the voice of God filled the air. The same God who had opened the Red Sea now came down to speak directly to his people. There, God gave Moses the 10 Commandments, laws not of slavery but of freedom, words meant to teach humanity how to live with justice, love, and reverence. At the top of the mountain, Moses stood surrounded by clouds and glory. But days turned into weeks and impatience grew. They began to wonder if Moses would ever return. Fear turned into rebellion, and soon they built a golden calf, bowing to it as their new god. The same people who had seen the sea open, now worshiping an idol made of metal. When Moses came down and saw what they had done, he was heartbroken. The tablets of stone slipped from his hands and shattered. The sound echoed through the valley, the sound of a broken promise. But even in their failure, God didn't abandon them. He forgave them, restored them, and renewed his covenant. A pillar of fire continued to guide them at night and a cloud by day. Step by step, the people moved closer to the land that had been promised. Not just a physical land, but a destiny. Because the story of the Red Sea was never only about water or miracles. It was about trust, and a trust that had to survive deserts, hunger, thirst, and doubt. Maybe that's why this story still speaks to us today. Sometimes God doesn't remove the desert. He walks with us through it. He teaches us that faith is not proven in the calm, but in the storm. So if you've crossed your Red Sea but now find yourself in a dry, difficult place, remember, God didn't bring you this far to leave you now. The same hand that opened the waters can still bring rivers out of stone. If this message touched your heart, write in the comments, "Even in the desert, God provides." And don't forget to subscribe, because in the next episode we'll discover what happened when Moses met God face to face. The moment that changed history forever.